I'm extremely fortunate in our panelists today, and I'll introduce them from the end. Mr. Toru Nishihama, Senior Economist, Daiichi Life Research Institute. Next to him, Xiao Mingjie, SMBC Nikko Securities. And to my right, Yasuyuki Kuratsu, who is Executive Director of the Industrial and Infrastructure Fund Investment Corp, which is a REIT listed here in Tokyo. And how good these days are Japanese companies at operating inside China, almost becoming Chinese companies? I mean, there have been cultural difficulties in the past. Have Japanese companies got better at understanding their market and behaving as Chinese companies would do in terms of, shaping products and marketing them in a local way?
Yes, of course, they have to move ahead with localization. In particular, among Japanese companies, in many cases, the top management is Japanese, the middle management is Japanese in many cases, and in many cases, the companies have not really become local. So the question is, how do you hire local people? And you have to develop and provide products for the local market. So the local people and the Japanese people will have to cooperate with each other, and that will lead to a better management in China. In Middle East or Africa, the Korean products are selling relatively well because the top management may be from Korea, but from middle management downwards, they have local people, and the Korean management are working with the local people. The Japanese manufacturers, are they deep rooted in the local market as they are, as the Koreans are? Probably not yet. So there's a lot of improvement that we can expect.
Xiao Mingjie, do you believe that there's a risk of Korean companies eating, in terms of localization, eating Japanese companies' lunch in China?
Well, a lot of people talk about that, the importance of localization. According to textbooks, yes, of course, localization is necessary. However, is localization everything? I have questions about that. The Japanese brands will have to be protected by the Japanese, and why do the Chinese tourists come to Japan, or maybe London or New York for that matter, and purchase things that they cannot find in their local market? The reason is because they do not trust local products, and if they purchase a product in Japan, they trust those products 100%. And the Japanese brands are considered premium brands. Localization is good for any industry, including the auto industry. However, made in Japan is something that the Japanese companies will have to work on more so that they can export to China. Actually, the Chinese consumers are interested in coming to Japan to purchase Japanese products. I think that need will increase in the future. So I cannot support localization 100%.
Doing business in or with China, there's clearly reform momentum under Xi Jinping, but there are clearly risks too in the financial sector. Local government financing vehicles have splurged the model of development, which is basically to appropriate land and sell it for revenues, is one that is raising all sorts of problems. We in The Economist this week have devoted 14 pages to the challenges of urbanization in China, which are challenges that actually affect the world, not just Chinese. It's essential that it succeeds. What are the risks? Perhaps we can talk about, in particular, the financial sector and the banks. Yes, please.
I feel listening to the two other panelists who are more or less positive or looking towards the future. But I would like to say something from the negative point of view. There is some risk there. From my own experience, At a very fast pace, domestic outstanding credit is increasing, almost the same as the GDP of a smaller country. This is something that is unimaginable to us. Will they be able to come out of this unscathed? There is some questions about that. We are already seeing some defaults or some runs on banks. And the government bonds are not finding enough investors. The PBOC and the CBRCs seem to be at odds against each other. So the regulatory authorities are not in a good condition. So if you look at the current financial state, there seems to be a risk. Mr. Xiao mentioned that China is at a turning point. It is true that the capital and financial markets in China are at a turning point. That is for sure. Now, how can Japan protect itself? We may not be fully prepared yet. Personally, I have some doubts about the preparation. If you look at the BOJ or government economic forecast, they do not seem to refer that much to the financial risks of China. If you look at the Sino-Japanese relationships, I do not think that relationship is in a risky state. We cannot do without each other, and both countries will be seeing an aged society, and I don't think we can afford to be at odds with each other forever.
Xiaominjie, do you share some of Mr. Kuratsu's concerns about the banking system, the financial sector generally?
So the Japanese have been extremely sensitive about that word for the past 20 years or so. And I think the situation in China concerning the banking system is pretty severe, and particularly the post-Lehman era. And there has been an explosion in the credit. And then there has been a sort of real estate boom. And you could say that that is a byproduct of in a way, of the Lehman crisis. And more recently, if I look at the situation, and I will be going to the United States next month, and I would like to ask the American investors, that is to say, the financial risk in China. My feeling is that the Japanese investors are most sensitive, most critical. That is to say, coming into this year, and if you look at the Japanese stocks, they're not very vibrant. There has been a decline by 10% or so. So the China risk, and the Japanese investors talk about this, or the Chinese financial risk, and that there has been some examples of default. And of course, there's the wealth management products, which are on shaking grounds. So, but having said that, what I ask the investors is the China risk is the exposure of China risk is not only for Japan, but for other countries as well. But then why is the U.S. equities so vibrant versus the Japanese stocks? Why is it in the doldrums? So no one invests in Chinese wealth management products. But if there's a default in China, the stocks in Shanghai and Hong Kong would rise, but the Japanese stocks decline. And the reason for this, the cause for this, is that from the Japanese eyes, maybe they think this is what experienced back in the 1990s, and China is going to go through the same road or the track as we did. And so I think the Japanese have not forgotten the lessons of the 1990s. Maybe, and China right now maybe is in a similar situation. China right now is in a similar situation to Japan back in the 1990s. So I would agree, but... And what is complicated is that the real economy in China, let's look at the real economy, not the financial sector, that is still in the 1970s of Japan. So per capita GDP is about $7,000. So that's about the same situation level as Japan in the 1970s.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists, Mr. Koretsu, Xiaoming Jie, and Nishihama-san.